Hey, what's happening? Chad Allen here, and we are going to be continuing to discuss the purpose of blessing and how blessing can really change the trajectory of your family and your business to have more success because I believe that this is a root cause, having a lack of blessing, a root cause of why so many are having their fears or afraid to get out of their comfort zone, or there's a sense of insecurity that's taking place within them, a sense of a lack of identity, a lack of destiny. And we have all gone through this, and a lot of this stems from our own culture, because our culture does not put an emphasis on the family and the purpose of the family unit, and how to be a blessing to others, and how to translate that family into business and to ultimate prosperity and success, and whatever that success is, family success, spiritual success, financial success, all the successes in the world. So I'm going to continue to read from chapter 2 of Barakah. This is the book, A Parent's Guide to a Christian Bar Mitzvah. And chapter 2 is right here. What does blessing do? So yesterday we discussed about how uh, blessing is an ancient path that God used through uh, the fathers and mothers to pass on blessing, to pass on prosperity. Even God Himself, did it with Jesus when He went into the Jordan River, and He said, "This is my beloved Son, who I am well pleased." And so it's an ancient path that has been passed on uh, in the days of old. But now that we're in modern times, we have gotten away from this, and our sense of identity, our sense of destiny, our sense of who we are, that all this has been lost and has been driven away by the uh, the devil himself, right? I mean, he separating everything from us and keeping us away from what we could really be, our full potential. And so my purpose for this particular series is to share how you can you know find those fears that you're having, and defeat them. How you may not have received the blessing from your father, uh, but you can receive the blessing from your heavenly Father, and you can move forward and get past all of the pains and guilt and hurt that you're feeling, so that you could be more successful in your family and your business. So let's go get reading. And this is a very short. It's not very long. It might be 10 minutes maximum that this chapter will take. And it's called Chapter 2. What does blessing do? As we mentioned earlier, one of the primary connotations of the Hebrew word baruch, to bless, is to empower, to prosper. Thus, blessing at the time of puberty empowers a son or daughter to prosper in his/her adult life. If you can remember back to the time of puberty, it was sort of a fearful time. There is so much change going on in your mind, emotions, and physical body. Usually, for the first time, you must undress before your peers in the school locker room for PE class. Everyone is checking each other out, and everyone is fearful that there is something wrong with him/her. Sure enough, the devil will always see to it that there is someone there to confirm your fears and let you know that you are in some way inadequate as a man or a woman. It was God's intent to settle male and female adult identity through a ceremonial blessing from a father. When this truly happens, no one else can shake or discredit your manhood or womanhood. Ceremonial blessing at the time of puberty releases a son or daughter spiritually and emotionally into manhood or womanhood. It establishes a settled sense of identity and destiny in the soul. The reason I say ceremonial blessing is because the ceremony is very important. In our modern culture, that value of ceremony has all but disappeared. Ceremonies bring emotional closure to certain seasons of life and an issue and new seasons. Without ceremony, many times there is no emotional closure in the heart of the person. A man still feels like a boy inside, or a woman like a girl. Let me illustrate the point utilizing the marriage ceremony, which most people understand. I have I have had the following conversations with many married couples. Are you married? I ask. Yes, they answer. Are you certain you're married? Looking at each other and giggling, they both answer, yes, I am certain that we're married. I then continue. How do you know you're married? I just know I am, they reply. When did you become married? I asked. They would then respond with the date of their wedding. After you had your wedding, did you immediately the next day begin introducing this woman as your wife or this man as your husband? Yes, immediately the next day. Has there ever been a time since your wedding when you woke up in the morning and thought, I wonder if I'm really married? Maybe it didn't take place. Maybe we should redo the ceremony. Again, they look at each other, laugh, and say, no, I've always, since my wedding day, known I was married. I then say, now, you may have had days when you wish you weren't married, but you're telling me that there has never been one day when you question whether you were really married or not. The answer, that's right, not one day. Now that gives a couple such assuredness and eternal confidence that they are married. It is the wedding ceremony. I have not gotten the same type of confidence you have not gotten the same type of confidence you've got to be kidding. What a stupid question type of answers from unmarried people simply living together. The wedding ceremony brings an emotional closure to single life and an absolute eternal assurance that one is now married. This was God's intention. Again, marriage and the wedding ceremony are not old fashioned traditions. A wedding is olam, an ancient path of God. In the same way that a wedding ceremony brings emotional closure to single life and a release and eternal confidence regarding the fact that one is married, so the ceremonial blessing at puberty brings emotional closure to childhood and a release and confidence regarding one's own manhood or womanhood. Once this happens, no one can steal your identity and destiny from you. A man who knows he is a man does not have to prove his manhood to himself or anyone else. When spiritual and emotional closure has been brought to the issue, it doesn't matter what anyone else says or does. In manhood or womanhood is not at stake in the ridicule or rejection of others. It is settled. This brings the soul into peace. When there has not been a proper release into manhood or womanhood through ceremonial blessing by parents, there often remains in the heart a lingering feeling of childhood. This feeling is not logical and does not go away with age. I have spoken with many grown people who tell me that on the inside they still feel like little boys or little girls. Some keep waiting for a certain age that the feeling to go away. However, this feeling is not age dependent. Some think, well, when I'm 21, then I'll be a man. 21 comes and goes, but the feeling of being just a little boy remains. He then thinks, well, maybe at 30, 30 comes and goes, and the feeling remains. He then thinks 40 will be the big change. However, the feeling of childhood does not go away at 30, 40, 50, or even over 60. I was speaking this I was speaking this in one meeting, and a gentleman in the front row piped up, "Brother, it doesn't go away at 83." That was his age, and he could relate to the feeling of being a dumb little kid even at age 83. The feeling of not really being an adult is not dependent on age, but rather dependent upon an emotional release into adulthood. This is why God intended for everyone to experience a powerful release into adulthood through the ceremonial blessing of a father at the time of puberty. When this takes place, this blessing, in a healthy and right way, severs identity from the mother and releases the son or daughter into adulthood. Without it, the identity oftentimes remains tied to the mother, and the person is retained in emotional childhood. Another consequence of not being released into adulthood at the time of puberty is a continual striving to prove manhood or womanhood. I believe that this is the root of much of the sexual immorality currently rampant among young people. A young woman who has never been blessed or released by her father may go in search of acceptance through provocativity, provocatively dressing or attempting to attract the sexual attention of young men. A young man who is not settled in his own identity as a man will frequently strive to become a man through the sexual conquest of women. These, of course, are not the actions of a man, but rather those of an insecure little boy living inside a man's body. A true man or woman is secure in himself herself and has no need to prove his her womanhood to manhood womanhood to himself herself or anyone else. It is a settled issue. If young people are not released into adulthood through their ceremonial blessing of parents, many times they will strive to release themselves into adulthood. The devil is only too happy to oblige them with many counterfeits. Many join gangs in search of a counterfeit family and a counterfeit release into adulthood. Gangs have ways to become a man or a woman, kill a rival gang member, or some other such heroic deed, and one can be deemed a man or a woman in a gang. Others are compelled to attempt some daring feat to prove their adulthood. Others leave home and join the military, usually the Marine Corps. Others become ensnared in homosexuality and such of the blessing and affirmation that should have come from a father and never did. Others simply spend a lifetime striving after success, always coming up short and still frequently feeling like a foolish little boy or girl. inside. How important is blessing? It is interesting to note that the blessing of the Father is so important that Jesus the Messiah did perform one miracle or preach one message until the blessing of God his Father was pronounced upon him. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 3, we read, "And the Holy Spirit descended in bodily form like a dove upon him, and a voice came from heaven, which said, You are my beloved Son, in you I am well pleased." Luke 3:22. When we read the above phrase spoken by the Father over Jesus, it is unfamiliar to most of us. I am told that it was not an unfamiliar phrase to the Jews of that time. They all would have heard this phrase. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased, many times. I am told that this was a common phrase spoken by every Jewish father over his son at the son's bar mitzvah ceremony. Thus, anyone who had ever attended a bar mitzvah ceremony would be familiar with this phrase. The only person over whom this phrase would not be spoken was a person of illegitimate or questionable birth. Because of the strange manner in which Jesus' birth occurred, it was not understood and thus considered illegitimate by most. Furthermore, since Jesus was not Joseph's biological son, he probably did not pronounce this blessing over Jesus at the time of his bar mitzvah ceremony. I am sure in his humanity, this could have caused some potential insecurity for Jesus. Have you ever thought what it must have been like for Jesus to be God himself, living in human form? At some point in his childhood, he must have begun to recognize that he was different from all other kids. He was entertaining thoughts such as, I am God. All the fullness of deity dwells in me in bodily form. This must have been very peculiar for him. He must have thought either I am really crazy or these thoughts are true. With whom could he counsel? Who could understand? Can you imagine going to the rabbi? Excuse me, Rabbi, but I have been thinking some very strange thoughts recently. I have had the thought that I am actually God Himself. What do you think about this? Perhaps his mother, the only person who could really understand what life might have been like for Jesus. I believe that in his humanity, Jesus experienced the same type of insecurities and fears that we do. If there was any insecurity, unsettledness, or doubts left about his identity or destiny, I believe that these things were absolutely set to rest at the Jordan River when the Father pronounced publicly for all to hear, You are my beloved Son, in you I am well pleased. I believe that this blessing from the Father, from his heavenly Father, gave Jesus the confidence and strength to walk in his true identity and ministry and fulfill his destiny on earth. God intended for this same type of blessing to come to each one of us from him through our earthly fathers. So yeah, so you can see how being how blessing your children and having a ceremony that releases them into adulthood that gives them the identity and gives them purpose and to empower them to prosper in their life uh, is very very powerful. And I also believe that this is probably the reason why there is so much identity confusion taking place in the country. There's so much identity confusion. There's so much pain and suffering that is taking place. A lot of internal struggles that so many of us are going through, including myself. I mean, I never had a quote unquote bar mitzvah or bar uh, Barakah, that would release me into adulthood. And I don't blame my parents for that. I don't blame my dad for that because they didn't know, right? They don't know about these things. They don't know the importance of, you know, and you're securing the identity of the sons and daughters and releasing them into adulthood and empowering them to prosper in their life. And for me personally, I still struggle with being able to with I think my biggest struggle is really the procrastination. It's like, trying to figure out how to get past and really do the work that I need to do to get going. I'll get started, and then for some reason, I will, there's like there's something that happens, and then I start backing up, and I think I can relate that going back into my own childhood and not having that release, and that confidence to really be the man who I am. When I got married, you know, I began to have that sense of manhood and that identity to be as a father, as a husband. Being married it was sort of like having the release into manhood for me. And so I think, before I was always this kind of insecure boy who was trying to find his way. It was always got hurt when someone would say something that I thought was nasty, and then finally when I started dating and I got myself married, and I started to get more confident. I was like that I began to have a purpose. I felt like there was a Valley, I mean, I have a purpose. There's something that's deep inside has been continuing to be fulfilled. But still, because of the lack of that ceremony, the blessing ceremony that released me into adulthood and to pronounce prosperity, from my father, there's still that lack of that emptiness that's inside that you're still trying to figure things out. You're still playing like you're being like a little bit of a kid. Still. And yes, you you're a Christian, you get baptized and stuff like that, and you believe, and but yet there's still that emptiness that's inside of all of us. I mean, and for me, and it's still there, and I'm still struggling, trying to get through, these things. And I think a lot can be answered by releasing our own children through this. And how does this relate to our business? Well, our own personal identity, our family, it all correlates to business because why? We're trying to have our own business and we're trying to grow it. But what if we take these concepts of blessing is hey blessing our team members, our business partners, and having a prayer and speaking blessing to them. What if we did that and all of a sudden they began to prosper, they began to build, they began to get the confidence that they need to actually uh grow in their own business and also in their own life. So what if we did that and we saw them become a a business machine, not only for themselves, for the family, for God, and for others. I mean, just imagine, just the power of uttering blessing uh, can do to each of those who we as to each of us who come in contact. It's like what James says, the power of blessing and cursing. The tongue has so much power in it that it can either cut deep or it can actually propel uh, someone further into their true calling and destiny. So I hope you got a lot out of this. I hope you enjoyed this part two of blessing, and tomorrow we're going to be discussing uh, chapter three. It's who should bless and when, and this is going to be very important. This is more going to be more like uh, and on the family side, but you can also utilize it as being like a business head, and you can actually use it for your business to help grow your business, and you really see it grow exponentially. So anyway, I really thank you for your time. Check out my profile, and and visit my page at thebillcrusher.com/Chad Allen, and leave a comment below, like as well, and share, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. You have an awesome, awesome day. Take care. Bye bye.